Hi everybody, my name is Eric Eversole, and Coco and I would like to welcome you to my science lab. I teach biology and environmental science here at Victory Christian Academy, and this is going to be my 4th year here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a few basic things. I'm going to be explaining what environmental science is, what biology is. I'm also going to be talking about what you may need for these classes, supplies-wise, how you're going to be graded in these classes, and then we're also going to talk about communication and what my hopes and goals are for this class. So, here we go. So as I mentioned earlier, the two classes that I'm going to be teaching this year are biology and environmental science. However, the first one I want to talk about is biology, because this is a really broad subject. Bio means life, ology the study of. Biology is literally the study of life, and it's the study of all life, which means we are going to be covering a lot of topics. We're going to be starting out the year at the microscopic level, exploring what makes life life. We're going to be looking at atoms and molecules and building our way up to the cell, which is the single smallest unit that can be actually considered alive. Then we're going to start to look at what those cells do. How do they function? Not just at the single level, but within our bodies, within Coco's body. We're going to be looking at those. We're going to be looking at how they replicate each other, how our DNA is made, why our DNA is important, what it does for us. We're going to be studying genetics, and then we're going to start to take a bigger look at life. We're going to start to look at those cells and the organisms that they make, from the microscopic to Coco and even beyond. And then we're even going to start to look at how things like Coco interacts with her ecosystem, whether for the better or for the worse. And that leads us into what the other science that I'll be teaching this year is, which is environmental science. And so some people hear environmental science and they're not sure what to think of it. They maybe think of global warming or climate change or pollution, and all of this is true. That is covered in environmental science, but it's so much more. Environmental science itself is a journey through the world that God has created. We first look at God's creation. We want to explore it and understand it. How does it work together? How is it that the cycles work within our ecosystems? How is it that the animals have enough food? How is it that the plants get the carbon dioxide that they need and we get the oxygen that we need from the plants? How is it that all those things interconnect with each other? How is it that the water has just the right amount of chemicals in it? Or what happens when the water doesn't have the right amount of chemicals in it? Do those fish die? Do they survive? Do they thrive? These are questions that we're going to be tackling within environmental science. We are going to be talking about things like climate change and how we should take care of the earth, but we're going to be doing it from a Christian perspective. A verse that's become very near and dear to me is Genesis 1:28. It's commonly referred to as what's known as the creation mandate, where God tells Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth and have dominion over it. And so within this class, we're going to be talking about what it means to have dominion over the earth as God intended and as He wants us to take care of His creation. And so I'm super excited to be teaching this class this year because it has just so many potentials to the way we live our lives. And so biology encompasses environmental science, and they are two great classes that I am super excited to teach this year. All right, Coco. So let's tell them first about the supplies that they're going to need for class. First of all, like all your classes, you're going to need something to write with. You're going to need a pencil or maybe a pen, either one, as long as you have more than one. I'm fine with you using a pencil. I'm fine with you using a pen. The only thing I will not accept is writing with like a red pen or a red pencil, because I use that color to grade with, and so it makes it a little confusing. So just any pen or pencil, and that'll be fine. You're also probably going to want a highlighter. There will be times, whether it's in biology or in environmental science where we're reading a field study, a journal article, or just something like that, that there's important things you're going to need to highlight. And so you're going to need a highlighter for that. Now, when we're reading these journal articles, or you're taking notes in class, or jotting down from our guided notes, you're going to need somewhere to store all that. And so that's why it's imperative that you have a 3-ring binder for class. And within that 3-ring binder, there should also be some loose paper, right? Just normal loose paper, because sometimes I do my daily bell work questions. I'll have you turn those in at the end of the week, and so you need to do that on a loose piece of paper. However, if we're not taking guided notes, sometimes I may have you take notes within your notebook. I'll tell you, get out your notebooks to take it. And so you should have a composition notebook in there too. It can be a spiral one like this, or a composition. I would highly recommend the spiral notebook, simply for the fact that it can go right in the binder. And so this composition notebook is going to stay that way. And what I mean by that is there's a reason I have you have the loose paper and the composition notebook. This is for specifically when I tell you to take notes in class. And so sometimes there will also be notes or pamphlets, little activities that we do or make within class, and I want you to glue those in here. So you're also going to need a few more supplies to round out your supply list for my class, and they're probably things that you already need for some of your other classes. So sometimes we might make little diagrams and stick them in here, and so to stick them in, you're probably going to need a glue stick. All right, and of course, before you can even glue it in, you're probably going to have to cut it out, so you're going to need some scissors. And sometimes there might be models where we have to label and color them so we can identify certain structures. So you're going to need some colored pencils. So again, there's going to be a whole list that you guys are going to get the first day of school. I'm going to give you, but just so you know and so you're prepared, you're going to need something to write with, pen and pencil. You're going to need a highlighter. You're going to need a binder to keep all your notes in. Within that binder, there should be some loose notebook paper and a notebook. And then for the notebook, you're going to need colored pencils, scissors, and glue. Now, we do have these supplies. However, due to COVID, we're not able to utilize these supplies all the time in class. That's why it's imperative that you have your own, especially the colored pencils. All the years that I've been teaching, a lot of times those kind of get forgotten and they end up just using a class set. However, due to COVID, we can no longer do this. So it's imperative that you have all these supplies ready for class. And I'm sure that you're going to need some of these supplies for your other classes too. So just make sure that you always have those. Now, on to the next thing. So now you may be wondering, well, how does grading work in these classes? How am I going to be graded? How am I going to get my grade? Well, about 15% of your grade comes from the labs that we do in class. Some of that being participation, the other portion being the lab reports that you have to write after those labs. The next 25% of your grade is going to come from just general classwork and homework. These are assignments like bell work or reviews, things like that. Another 25% is going to come from your quizzes. We will have weekly quizzes. Generally, these quizzes will be about just what we've been reviewing that week, and along the way there may be some Latin terminology thrown in, because Latin terminology is extremely important no matter what science you're dealing with. And so we'll have usually weekly Latin quizzes or just a general quiz over what we've been talking about that week. And that's going to be the other 25% of your grade. Now, if you've been following along and doing the math, that still leaves 35%. And that final 35% of your grade is going to come from tests and projects. Now, the reason this category weighs so much more than all the others is simply because tests and projects are there to help show mastery of a skill level. What this means is that the test helps me as a teacher see what things you understood and what you didn't, what you showed mastery of or improvement in. And so these tests help show when you pass the test, this student now understands these concepts. Sometimes, in lieu of a test, we may do a project for a chapter. And that's why projects are also bundled in within the test. Sometimes a project might be something like a diorama, a model, it could even be a poster, but there's also generally a written section that goes along with that. That's part of the research showing that mastery of the skills. So, to reiterate, 15% is labs and lab reports. Another 25% is just classwork and homework. Another 25% are our weekly quizzes. And then the last 35% are the tests and projects that we have throughout the quarter. All of those add up to your grade. And now I would like to talk about one of the most important keys to success: communication. Now, as Coco knows, you can clearly communicate with me through the computer. And communication is a huge factor in your child's success and for me being a successful teacher to your child. And so it's important that we stay in contact with each other when things aren't going right or just when things are going well. I want to let you know how well your child is doing, and so communication is huge. If you ever have an issue, I want you to feel like you can talk to me about it using lots of different methods. And so one way you can get a hold of me is through my school email. That is eversole@victorylakeland.org. You can also get a hold of me through the Remind app. Some of you guys may remember during COVID-19 last year, we started utilizing the Remind app as a way to send out quick little messages. And we'll still be utilizing that, at least in my class this year. However, unlike last year where you were allowed to submit assignments via Remind, that will not be happening this year. Remind will strictly be for announcements and quick question answering. Now, when you email me or send me a message through Remind, I'll try and get back with you as soon as possible. Our goal is always to get back with you within 24 hours. And so again, quick communication is the key to success, and we hope that we can achieve that through things like email, through Remind. And this year we'll also be using another tool known as Schoology. Now, you guys might have already heard about Schoology, but Schoology is a great program that I'm super excited to get to be using, because not only is it a way that we can communicate and have video conferences, but it's also a place where you can find assignments, times that they are due, and you can even submit assignments through Schoology. In fact, it's the only place I will accept virtual work is through Schoology. That means this year I won't be accepting papers or anything like that come through email or come through Remind. It has to be strictly either handed in or given through Schoology. And we'll be talking all about Schoology our first few weeks of school. We'll be going through it so you guys won't be confused, and we're all going to be learning about it and being able to just utilize it. It's a great program. It's going to be great for communication. It's going to be great for turning in assignments, seeing when assignments are due. But let's say the technology doesn't work. Well, we have a backup plan for communication. And I don't even like calling it a backup plan because it's something that should always be used in class, and that's the agenda. And so this agenda is going to be utilized for communicating what's going on in class, schoolwork-wise, tests, things like that. So every day when the student comes into class, they're going to see on our board the daily bell work, and they're also going to see something that says agenda. And it will say what the topic of the day is, what we're discussing, whether it's a test, if there are any upcoming tests, and they are to put that in their agenda for the day. That way, when they get home and you ask them, what did they do in class? Well, they could even just show you their agenda. And if they have written everything in their agenda like they're supposed to, then it should be all right there. You can see what they did for the day and even upcoming tests or quizzes. And so again, we highly, highly ask you to use your agendas this year because it's going to be extremely helpful. So to reiterate, the best ways to get in contact and to stay in contact would be through email or Schoology, through the Remind app, and you can even call directly by just calling the school's number and then using the extension 376, and that will bring you directly to me. So in this video, I hope I've kind of explained some of the things that will be going on in this classroom, who I am, what to expect for grades, how to communicate, and things like that. But what I would really like to leave you with is just an understanding of why I have such a passion for this, why I can be so close to this toad and not necessarily be freaked out, but in awe of such an amazing creature. And it's simply because of who our Creator is. You see, that's why I love being able to teach here, is the simple fact that I can not only blend the science that I teach your child and just share it with them, but I can share it with them through the lens that it was meant to be shared through a Creator who created it. Romans 1:20 says that, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities can clearly be seen through what He's created. And I wholeheartedly believe that. That's one of the reasons I love teaching science. It's one of the reasons I find Coco so fascinating, is just to look at her, to understand the way that God has designed her defenses, the way that He's designed her to do her job in the ecosystem and to do it well. And my goal for this class is that my students will be able to leave with a better understanding of God's creation, what He's created, how He's called us to take care of it. And my true hope is that when we study these things, we don't just study them to learn the facts, but we study them to better understand our Creator, how He created us, and who He wants us to be. My goal is that when you leave this class, you don't just remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but that you remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell that was designed by a Creator to give you the life that you have. You see, that's the whole point of this Christian education in a science classroom, is the fact that I can share that faith with you guys. And so my expectations for my students are high, but I want them to find the all in creation like I have. And so I just want to leave you guys with that message, to look for God through His creation, because that's what we're going to be doing in these classes. I'm super excited to see you guys. I can't wait till school starts. And from me and Coco, we'll see you soon.